Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, addresses the nation. Mr. President.
My fellow Nigerians, let me begin by congratulating all of us for witnessing the celebration of another Democracy Day today, the 12th day of June 2024. This year also marks our nation's 25 years of uninterrupted democratic governance. On this day, 31 years ago, we entered our rites of passage to becoming a true and enduring democratic society. Going through this passage was hard and dangerous. During the fateful 6 years that followed, we fought and struggled for our natural rights as human beings, put on this earth by the divine hand of our Creator. We lost great heroes and heroines along the way. In this struggle, the winner of June 12, 1993 presidential election, Chief MKO Abiola, the most significant symbol of our democratic struggle, his wife, Kudirat, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, and Pa Alfred Iwani, amongst others, sacrificed their very lives. They bravely surrendered their fortunes so that our nation might have a better one. Let us honor the memories of Chief Anthony Enahoro, Chief Abraham Adesanya, Commodore Dan Sulaiman, Chief Athon Wanko, Chief Chukwuemeka Ezeibe, Admiral Ndibusi Kanu, Chief Frank Kokori, Chief Bola Ige, Chief Adekunle Ajasin, Chief Gani Udaudu, Chief Ayo Fasanmi, Chief Gani Fawemi, Chief Olabi Idrojaye, Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, Chima Ubani, and others who have transited to higher realm. The sacrifices of General Alani Akinrade, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Professor Wole Soyinka, Chief Rab Obioha, Chief Colonel Adebayo, among many others, should never be forgotten. For at least 6 years, they bore the pain and difficulties of life in exile. While the exiled pro-democracy activists kept the fire burning, their comrades at home sustained the pressure on military leadership. Among the latter are Olisa Agbakoba, Femi Falana, Abdul Oro, Senator Shehu Sani, Governor Ubasani, Chief Olufalaye, and other National Democratic Coalition leaders such as Chief Ayo Adebanjo and Chief Ayo Padokun. The sacrifices they made and the precious gift brought about by their selfless devotion can never be repaid nor forgotten. We could not have won the battle against dictatorship without the irrepressible Nigerian journalists who mounted the barricades along with the pro-democracy activists. We celebrate them today, along with their media establishments, such as The Punch, The Guardian, National Concord, Tribune, The News and Tempo, and Tel magazines. The undemocratic government of the day proscribed these media establishments and jailed their journalists for standing for free speech and civil liberties and the sanctity of the June 12 elections. Despite the leather might of the authoritarian government, what appeared to be high and unyielding walls of dictatorship came tumbling down. The dismal fortress exists no longer. The power of an idea, the power of the people proved more potent than all the guns, the munitions, and the threat of the strong men. The nation exited the yoke of dictatorship in 1999 to become the most populous democracy on African soil, the beacon of democratic self-determination for the black race and one of the largest democracies in the world. This change stands as a pivotal moment in human history. From this change, we shall never turn, nor shall annals of mankind's progress forget the sublime meaning of this great moment. Today, 25 years later, we celebrate the silver anniversary of our journey in democracy. We have studied the course. Democracy is neither a foreign nor abstract concept devoid of real-life meaning for us. Neither can we afford to reduce or minimize it to being nothing but the mere holding of periodic elections where one candidate and party outdo another. While elections attract democratic attention, they are but one aspect of democracy. Democracy is a way of life that encompasses a broad outlook of which elections are but a part. As such, a nation can have elections without being democratic, but a nation cannot be truly democratic without holding elections. That we have established a tradition of holding transparent, open, and fair elections gives credence to our democratic standing. That we have experienced peaceful transitions of government affirms our democratic temperament. Fellow Nigerians, true democracy shined its light on the daily lives of the people who live under its nurturing wings. It affords us the freedom and liberty to think as we want, live where we want, and pursue whatever legitimate endeavor suits us. Democracy does not assume some false or false unity of opinion. In fact, democracy assumes that conflicting ideas and differing opinions shall be the order of the day, given the diversity and variety of the human experience. There must be diverse perspectives and viewpoints. What democracy demands is that we do not resolve differences through force and repression, but we make allowance for the legitimacy of views that differ from our own. The other forms of government imposed against the will of the people. Democracy aims to make leaders who conduct themselves as servants of the common good, not as viceroys of the narrow interests of the might. My dear compatriots, Nigeria faced the decision of untold gravity 25 years ago, whether to veer towards better destination or continue aimlessly in fog of dictatorship. We made the right choice then. We must continue with that choice now. As Nigerians, we must remind ourselves that no matter how complicated democracy may be, it is the best form of governance in the long run. We must also be aware that there are those among us who will try to exploit current challenges to undermine, if not destroy, this democracy for which so much has already been given. This is the great battle of our day and the major reason we specially celebrate this day as Democracy Day. The true meaning of the day is not to focus solely on the great deeds of the past that have brought us to this point. Yes, we pay eternal honor to those who laid down their lives, sacrificing everything to pave the way for the nation. I stand uniquely placed in this regard, and I was among those who took the risk to midwife the birth of our democracy. I am now a direct and obvious beneficiary of the fruit of those historic efforts. As a president of this nation, I am morally and constitutionally bound to preserve this precious form of governance. I vow to do my utmost best to protect your rights, freedom, and liberty as citizens of Nigeria. Even more than that, I pledge to do whatever is necessary to cement democracy as our way of life. Although the challenges are steep and multiple, I am grateful to lead Nigeria at this moment in our history and point in our democratic journey. I come before you also to declare that our most important work remains before us. The real test has never been whether we will rise to the challenge, the sling of misfortune and grievous pains of dictatorship. The real test is whether we shall lower our guards and fail to defend democracy as the shadow of despotism and its evident physical danger fade. I say to you here and now that as we celebrate the enshrinement of our political democracy, let us commit ourselves to the fulfillment of equally important counterpart, the realization of our economic democracy. I understand the economic difficulties we face as a nation right now. Our economy has been in desperate need of reform for decades. It has been unbalanced because it was built on the flawed foundations and over-reliance on revenue from exploitation of oil. The reforms we have initiated are intended to create a stronger, better foundation for future growth. There is no doubt that the reform has occasioned hardship. I feel your pains. Yet the unnecessary repairs required to fix the economy over the long run so that everyone has access to economic opportunity, fair pay, and compensation for its endeavor and labor. As we continue to reform the economy, I shall always listen to the people and will never turn my back on you. In this spirit, we have negotiated in good faith and with open arms with organized labor on a new national minimum wage. We shall soon send our executive bill to the National Assembly to enshrine what has been agreed upon as part of our law for the next 5 years or less. In the face of labor's call for national strike, we did not seek to oppress or crack down on the workers as a dictatorial government of the past would have done. We chose the path of cooperation over conflict. Nobody was arrested or threatened. Instead, the labor leadership was invited to break bread and negotiate towards good faith resolution. Reasoned discussions and principled compromise are a hallmark of democracy. These themselves shall continue to animate my policies and interaction with the constituent part of our political economy. I take on this vital task without fear or favor, and I commit myself to this work until we have built a Nigeria where no man is oppressed. In the end, our national greatness will not be achieved by traversing or traveling the easy way. It can only be achieved by taking the right one. The words of American President Franklin Roosevelt sadly rings true, and I quote, "There are many ways of going forward, but only one way of standing still," and unquote. We dare not slumber, lest the good things awaiting our immediate future pass us by. We dare not plant our feet in the idle standstill in the middle of the intersection of hope and despair. We know the proper way forward, and we shall take it. The initial rays of a brighter tomorrow now appears on the horizon. An abundant future and our capacity to achieve that future lies within our reach. Democracy and the institution it begats over to take us to our profound destination. Let us board this progressive train together. And together, let us move Nigeria forward. Let's continue to keep the fire of democracy burning. Let's keep the torch lit for generations to come. May God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria and preserve our democracy. I wish us all happy Democracy Day.
The president's live broadcast to the entire nation on Democracy Day, June 12th. That's how we welcome you to the program this morning. It's the morning brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzong, as always, and with my people as we begin to take a look at what the president said.
Yeah, indeed. Happy Democracy Day, Nigerians, as we continue in our strives to achieve our freedoms, our liberties, and development, and equitable distribution of resources to everyone, irrespective of where they are on the social ladder. Good morning and welcome to the morning brief right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, we're live for you in Lagos. Welcome to the show. It's a big day here in Nigeria, and we're here to walk you through the essence of that big day and what it means for us moving forward.
Well, the president has made his speech, his official speech for Democracy Day. I know there will be a lot of commentary from this particular speech by the president, but just a quick rundown could mean the president was simply paying tribute to the struggles or the people who struggle for democracy, all the way down to some of the names we've never seen being mentioned when it comes to remembering a day like this. Remember, it's 25 years of unbroken democracy, and this day is named after the very significant figure of that struggle, MKO Abiola, and every other person who paid for this particular struggle with their lives and those who are still alive. It went on to talk about a lot that has to do with the issue of democracy and the best option being democracy, the issue of liberty and all of that. Reeled out issues around the economy, and now we understand that there are challenges within the economy, but it's a necessary pain for a better future. And he called on everyone's hands to be on deck. He even mentioned himself to be a direct beneficiary of that particular struggle. And he understands that he needs to reset the economy for a better prosperity, a better future for us all. And of course, we're all waiting whether that announcement of the minimum wage will come. But the president has to indirectly telling us, just hold your fire for a bit. A bill will be sent to the National Assembly. Get to find out all of the details. Guys, what did you hear?
Well, Jeffrey, it's distinct that the president, the current president, used to be one of the heroes of democracy who fought for the struggle of this democracy. As a matter of fact, he acknowledged it in his speech by saying that he's one of those who midwifed this democracy, and it just happens to be Nigeria's president. And he says he appreciates that fact and that he's committed, to Nigeria's development, and he feels privileged to be one of those, to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria right now. And he says as a result that he'll be responsible and he will listen to the yearnings of Nigerians. And if the president is this committed, it should then reflect in the progress and development that Nigeria should record onward from this point. And the president went on to talk about the economy and the necessary sacrifices that we must make. We've been hearing that for the last 1 year. The question is, when will there be results? Kayode.
Well, 18 minutes listening to the president is very... I think this is the first of many, listening to the new national anthem being played just right before the president's speech, and then the president going all the way back, not to 25 years, but 31 years ago, 1993. And he said that was where we entered the rites of passage to becoming the democracy we are right now. And it was good to hear the president mention some of those names. Some might say there are other names that you probably never hear, but these are prominent names. And you'll notice that those names are across party lines. Some of them obviously are not members of the APC right now. Some of them staunch critics of the president right now. And it speaks to what democracy should be. Everybody should have a right to have their say. And the president dovetailed from the roll call of sorts and dovetailed into like a class on democracy. It almost felt like that. The president defining what democracy is, what it ought to be. But one of the strong points for me was the fact that he said the most important work lies ahead of us. So we can talk about 31 years ago, 25 years ago, but what will democracy be for Nigeria in the next 1 day, 2 days, 1 year, 2 years? Now, those are the questions that we need to obviously tackle. So Democracy Day in Nigeria, there is work ahead of us. Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, the president, one of the striking statements he made for me was that liberty, paraphrasing now, is at the core of democracy. I'm sure people are curious as to why, as you've mentioned, as we've observed, he spoke a lot about democracy. So that's getting a lot of people thinking about this particular democracy and all of that. But at the core of democracy is liberty. But we're going to be joined by some experts, distinguished men who have an understanding of how to look at some of these speeches by leaders of country and break it down for us even further as to what this is all about and what we can look forward to given the president's position from today's Democracy Day speech. We're going to take this quick break. When we come back, we'll start our conversation right here. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's Democracy Day special. So happy Democracy Day to all of us in Nigeria and friends of Nigerian. And that's why we are having this conversation. The president has just given a statewide broadcast where he spoke about a range of things and a range of issues. But focally, he was talking about the beauty and triumph of democracy. We've been joined in the program by Director of Commonwealth Institute and Chairman June 12 Movement, Professor Anthony Killer, who is going to be helping us break down this particular broadcast by President Bola Tinubu. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming on the program.
Good to be here. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Perhaps the natural place to start, your impression of the president's speech.
Well, I think it was a good speech. Overall, I think it was a good speech. At least it was my kind of speech, because those who follow my writing and my opinion on speeches, I've advocated for over 12 years in this country, that especially in the last 4-8 years, that there should be a distinction between the speech of May 29th, which is an accountability of governance from the day you're sworn in, and June 12th, which is a celebration and recognition of Democracy Day. And the president talked about his moral and constitutional duty as a direct beneficiary. Let me absolve my own moral and historical duty, given that I'm a very known critic of the Buhari administration, to appreciate the past President Buhari under whose watch this day became recognized as Democracy Day. But I say this because if you ask me what Buhari has achieved, I'll say this is the only thing he achieved. You know, every other thing pales, every other thing he touched went awry. So recognizing this day, especially because before him, others had the opportunity of doing it and they didn't do so, and it happened under him. I think we should recognize that administration for that. In terms of today's speech, I think it was a good speech because I've always argued that on this day, we should talk about democracy, not about governance, not about my administration. And I think the president fulfilled that well. You know, he almost became like a priest or, you know, a moralist or a theorist of democracy. That's a good thing. The problem with him is that it's not enough for him to talk. He will be judged on his action as well. And so far, not so good. Let's be frank with ourselves. That's a problem, though. But in terms of the speech, which is your question, Geoffrey, how was the speech? Mm-hmm. The speech was good. My impression was that it was well crafted. It understood text in context of democracy. And when he inserted himself saying, I'm a direct beneficiary of that, therefore, I understand the onus on me to perform very well, and I promise to do so. The problem we have is that the fruit of his labor have not yielded results yet for most Nigerians, if we want to be objective, where at the moment now, he says, the way we've been doing it has been wrong. And he used a good expression. It's not my expression, but, you know, it's the kind of expression people like him use, the social democratic kind of people. He talked about economic democracy. We must admit that under him, we're not doing well on that one. You know, that must be very clear. We shouldn't dance around it if we have a conscience. So far, so bad on that. But he says, we are rebuilding, we're reforming. So at the moment, in terms of the economic democracy, we're in a situation where some viewers will know that at home or when you go to a restaurant, when they tell you, just hang on a second, we're cooking the food. It's going to come and it's going to be great. So far, we're hungry. The food is not there yet, but he says, wait, it will come. That's where we are. That's the one paragraph inserted of his administration. The rest was the greatness of democracy. I also like, as you've mentioned, the fact that he actually listed, you know, the heroes, the gladiators who stood for this democracy. Mm-hmm. And it's a good list. Not complete, you know, because but it can't be complete. If he was going to list everybody, that would be, the speech would just be, here's the list. But he listed some very crucial people. I think in a very Nigerian way, federal character, cross-party, cross-region, he tried to pick on everybody. So I think it was a well-crafted speech. Some people sat down and thought about people like me who will come and look for what is wrong with it. And it ticked all the boxes. So to that extent, it was good. He talked about, strangely, he also recognized the media, so you guys should be happy, you know. And, he recognized your battle there, named some newspapers. He left out Labour. I think that wasn't good, you know, because he mentioned some individual leaders in Labour, Franco Correa, my mentor, some other people. The late Franco Correa still sounds alive in my mind. Those are people who groomed people like us. But he left out Labour, which played a crucial role. You know, that institution, that is the strange thing. But overall, I mean, I'm not a very generous marker, but I will rate this high, generally speaking, yes.
Yes, indeed, Prof. And your point about the need to talk about democracy, yes, you know, as an ideal is quite appreciated, and not necessarily about governance, yes, you know, but really democracy is a form of governance.
Yes.
And so perhaps it's also important to reflect on where we are as well. And for me, it's particularly instructive because, as I said earlier, one of the high points is that the president himself was one of the heroes of democracy. And he acknowledged it by saying that he is morally and constitutionally bound, to also midwife the developmental process, which is where I want us to reflect on. Are there any signs that there is clarity of purpose and the approaches to taking Nigeria out of these economic woes that we currently find ourselves in. Because if indeed the president is one of the heroes of democracy, then Nigeria should consider itself lucky to have him as the president at this point in time. But are there any signs that indeed the administration wholly has a clear understanding of how to take us out of where we are to where we want to be?
Well, the problem with governance is that you don't judge it on intention, you judge it on facts. Until we see the fact, we can't say it's good. You know, you might have very good intentions, and this government is high on intentions, but until you actually bring the food to the table, nobody can say how good you are, a chef or cook. That's the problem we have with that. So, you know, as he says, wait. We just have to wait. The other side of it is that whilst waiting, what we can't do, though, is demand. We can demand, for example, that the government stop being wasteful, you know. So a government that says, wait, we're working for you, should not be sending 19 billion on Hajj. A government that says, wait, we're working for you, should not be splashing money on new cars for legislators, as if they came to Abuja without cars. You know, they did have cars. Perhaps the government who says, wait, we're working for you, should not be renovating houses with billions, not as if the roofs were leaking. Those are the kind of contradictions you get. It might sound populist because overall, those amounts will not change the economy. I say this as an economist. You know, it's not that if you don't buy cars, all of a sudden the Nigerian economy will be better. No. It just has a sense of wrong signal. And somebody who, perhaps not hero, let's, you know, as one of the soldiers of democracy, who the president is, those things should be understood, that it is important to send the right signals in democracy as well.
Well, let's shift gears for a moment and bring in Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Ebolu Adegborough, who is in our Abuja studio, joins us also for this Democracy Day special. Good morning, Senior Advocate. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Thank you.
Well, I could talk about your June 12 experience as well, even though the president didn't mention your name or that of Professor Killer. But that doesn't take away the fact that you played your role as well. I was just reading something about your journey from Area F Ikeja to DMI Apapa. So clearly you have your own attachment to this celebration in court. But I remember also about 2-3 years ago, you had asked that, you know, people boycott government events. You said that even that president then, former President Buhari, didn't have any reason to celebrate Democracy Day and the rest. But now there's a new administration, the Tinubu government, giving this Democracy Day speech. From that journey, what you experienced up until now, does it match up for you, the speech you heard today?
Thank you very much, Kaude. Good morning, fellow Nigerians. Good morning, Professor Killer, my dear comrade. I listened to the speech of the president. Unfortunately, I'm unable to agree that anything has changed. It is true that the president, along with us and many other Nigerians, campaigned for democracy. You would ask me, what were we fighting for? The June 12 election was annulled by the military, and we were advocating for that election to be recognized. And then along with it was also to ensure that we enjoyed true federalism, and that subsequent elections will probably be better than the one we had in 1993. And I'm sure you know clearly that the election that brought the current president into office was nothing to write home about. And elections that have held since he assumed office have gotten worse. So you ask me to say that, can we still describe ourselves as heroes of democracy? You know, especially if you have one of us who is now in power. Of course, I would say no. I expected on a day like this, all Nigerians who are being held in custody wrongfully should be released. I expected on a day like this, if indeed we say it's a day to commemorate democracy in Nigeria, we should talk about engaging the constituent units of this nation to find out whether indeed we are running a true federation. What are people agitating for? Why is there continual issues of banditry? Why is IPOB agitating? Why is there crisis in the Southwest? I thought that occasions like this will give us a roadmap of steps to be taken to achieve true democracy. What are we doing to amend the Constitution? When are we going to really start the journey of true federation, restructuring? When are we going to get to a stage when the judiciary will become the bastion of our democratic experience? So I'm sorry, I'm not impressed in any way at all by the speech of the president, in the sense that it is just rehashing history. Any historian who has read the contributions of Democrats, of comrades, of activists, will read any speech like this. But for somebody who was in the forefront of that struggle, somebody who himself was part of that particular struggle, and is now the person in charge of the affairs of the country, I expected more, honestly. And so for me, looking at the past 1 year, and indeed our collective history from the period when we started agitating for democracy, it's gotten worse. Nothing has changed at all. As we speak here this morning, you are well aware that there are journalists who are kept in various detention centers because they criticize their governors, because they wrote something concerning a public officer, he was not happy about it, and then they are languishing in custody. That shouldn't be. I commend the president for asking Nigerians to hold him accountable morally and constitutionally for democracy, but it's just a matter of speech. You know what is going on in this country, the way the law enforcement agencies are still harassing Nigerians, the way the police stations have still continually become detention centers without regard to constitutional provisions about bail and freedom. So I expected an organic program that will define a movement forward. It's not enough for the president to say that we didn't arrest labor leaders when they declared their strike. What is the outcome of that strike? You know, a day like this should have contained a declaration to say we're paying 100,000, we're paying 200,000. But the president cleverly parried it and said we're going to send a bill to the National Assembly. So I expected something different, you know, from somebody who indeed was part of the struggle for democracy. So if you ask me my impression concerning this speech, it's just history. It's not different from what any columnist will write concerning the history of Nigeria. Thank you.
So if we'll bring it back to the studio, I'm sure you have a reaction to what the senior advocate has said. Perhaps it looks like what they say in law, beyond obiter dictum to enforceable decisions. Yeah. Do you agree that that should be, because you seem to say highlighting some of these things that are critical, yeah, but got into the nitty-gritty, you don't, I'm not sure how you want to characterize us, but maybe replying what he said.
Well, I think, you know, typical of Gorua, he has a vision of the world. He's very clear on what things ought to be. He's not a theorist, you know, at least not just a theorist, because he's a theorist as well. He explains, on this day, for example, what Ebun says is that the president, you say, because I'm a Democrat, I will start making sure that police do not brutalize Nigerians again. He says, moving forward. I think the president stopped at the moving forward to say, our past is great, but the test of democracy is what we do going forward today. But yes, everyone's right. He did not then give concrete actions of what that moving forward will be like. I stopped before he came in saying that the true test for democracy for me is what the rest of us do, that we need to keep demanding. And I think now, that we're leading that demand to say, actually, our idea of democracy, what we fought for then, was an election that was free and fair, that was annulled, an idea of Nigeria that is truly federal, that is truly free from brutalization of police, because many of us were brutalized, brutalization of police, that is free from unfair election, that is free of imposition of people that is based on merit. I think that is the way forward now, where the press is free. He's very right. The League of Columnists, to whom I belong and act as Secretary General, released a statement just yesterday, the day before yesterday, condemning the spate of arrest of journalists in the country. Some people even use the word expression. So in a democratic country, as with history and chronicles of the world tells us, it is a rare thing for a journalist to be arrested in a truly democratic country. You know, it rarely happens. If somebody publishes something false, which is a crime, is bad, the courts are there, you know, fines are there. Those are civil things. You don't abduct people because they insult you or because they disagree with you. That's out of the world. But I think the kind of democracy we've constructed in 25 years is very far from what we imagined 31 years ago. Let's be factual about that. When we were moving for that democracy, we didn't imagine governor emperors. We didn't imagine where in one state there will be factions pro-present governor, pro-past governor. That was not the idea. We didn't imagine expressions like Godfather. That's not that. So we need to be realistic about that. So what we now need to do, besides the fact that those who are old enough to know democracy, that fought for that democracy, in their mind had a parliamentary system in their mind. That's the kind of democracy we knew. So moving forward, what we need to do is to say those things that we wanted. Federalism, a people's constitution, is something still missing. But personally, I don't have a lot of hope in those in power. I have hope in the civil society that will keep pushing to say, let's have a people's constitution, let's go for a true federal Nigeria, let us make sure legislators legislate instead of doling out bags of food. That is not their duty. Let them go. This is a part that I'm very keen on. The other arms of government, let legislators remember that their duty is to stand up for their constituency, so that regardless of our party, the legislator from Lagos should be different in view and in voting from the legislator from Zamfara. And I say this because I'm from Lagos and I have cousins in Zamfara. But it doesn't matter if we're family members, but actually to say that these things do not tally with what we want. That's kind of legislative. And unfortunately, I underline unfortunately, we also have to call the judiciary into account in this democracy. A country where a court will issue an order against another order is not a democratic country. We need to start judiciary to play their part in this march towards a more perfect democracy, as it were.
And perhaps that would be, the ideal place to, continue the conversation from, particularly because of the commentary surrounding the judiciary at the moment. And the senior advocate had said that, the expectations are high that in this democracy, it is expected that the judiciary will be the bastion of democracy. And I'm coming to you, senior advocate, to take up on this, particularly because you also work within the precincts of that arm of government with so many criticisms about conflicting court orders and about judges not particularly being incorruptible, as the case may be. Is the judiciary playing its role by being above board to be that arm of democracy that will stand true for the ideals from its own corridor?
I have no doubt that the judiciary is still the gateway to democracy. And indeed, we must commend the courts and our judges for the role they played in the history of our democratic experience. If you use the life of the president himself, you will see that he said he's a beneficiary of democracy, and that's from the point of view of the judiciary, whether from his own personal life, when he was charged to court, to the CCB, or as governor of Lagos State when he filed several cases to challenge certain policies of the federal government. The judiciary has been the bulwark of our democratic progress. So I must commend the judges. There are exceptional and rare cases of some unexpected behavior but they are few and far between. Maybe because these events have come to national life, they seem to dim the general performance of the courts. The problem with judiciary is not about capacity. We have judges who know the law and are daily delivering decisions based on their conscience, based on the facts and the state of the law. The area where we address judiciary in relation to democracy and the speech of the president is funding, infrastructure. Okay, if you look at the history of the president as the governor of Lagos State, you know what he did for the judiciary in terms of electronic recording, appointment of more judicial officers, improving the welfare of judicial officers, you know, and then building more courts. That is our expectation from the president, that now that you are in charge of the federation, let's elevate the judiciary to its rightful place. Build more courts, appoint more judges, improve their welfare, both of judicial officers and judicial staff. I mean, it's the third arm of government. So you will compare the judiciary with the president and ministers. You compare judges with the Senate president and senators, and then you can see the difference in terms of how the executive are continually starved the judiciary of funding and infrastructure compared to the other arms of government. And I'm saying this because I know that every executive in power will do everything to stagnate judiciary. Because a functional judiciary is an active check on the excesses of government and the impunity of government officers. I mean, you look at the United States, a former president was convicted. And just yesterday or so, the son of a sitting president was also convicted. That's judiciary. When people have the capacity to take decisions without looking back, when high court judges can take decisions and they don't fear that there will be a backlash from governors, or that they will be arrested, or that the EFCC will be making allegations against them or be threatening, as it were in the days past. So, and I'm sorry I say this because I'm rating the president from the point of view of his own history.
Right.
If we have a military in government today, I will not be saying what I'm saying. I'm looking at the president as one of us. When we started this struggle together to say we want Nigeria to be free, we want true democracy. So if I'm in power today, I don't need anybody to pressurize me. I expected the president to be turning out executive bills every day on how to improve the judiciary, to build more courts, to appoint more judges, and then give sufficient capacity for judicial officers to be able to perform. And that's when you can get to the stage when, even as governor of Lagos State, he was able to challenge the federal government successfully concerning issues of local government creation, concerning issues of physical planning.
Right.
We don't have that currently. It's getting worse.
Well, it's interesting because we had a review of this administration on judiciary, and it looked like a lot of, at least the people we had on board, scored him high, particularly with appointment of judges and the rest. But you have pointed out some holes in that one, so it's important to take that on board. But I'd like to bring it back to some of the points that the president made in his speech. And I counted at least 4 times that appeared as though the president was maybe remarketing or reselling democracy to Nigerians, as though democracy was under an existential threat of sorts. He made statements like, from this change we shall never turn, we made the right choice then, we must continue with that choice. He said that preservation of democracy is something that he wants, pledges to do whatever necessary to cement democracy as our way of life. He said that let us bond or board this progressive train together. He kept making statements as though people were beginning to lose faith in democracy, and maybe that's a message that he gets from time to time. And I'll tie this to the point he made that what we're meant to have is leaders being servants of the common good, and not what we see now, that leaders are the ones living large at the expense of the common good. So I'll come to Professor Killer and then come back to Senior Advocate of Nigeria. And I'd like you to speak to this, Professor Killer. Just how much of a threat is democracy under? Because it sounds like the president was aware or is aware of that threat as well.
Well, I think two things. Number one is that your observation is very right. There's no other way to do it. The president was really remarketing, reselling democracy to us, like to remind us, well, a bit, like clerics or pastors do every Sunday and remind you that Christ loves you. I always wonder, if I'm in church, why are you telling me that again? I'm here already. But sometimes I guess you need to do it the same way why the president is doing it, because one of the reasons why people abandon, I say people, not leaders, abandon democracy and embrace dictatorial is bad governance. And a key indicator of bad governance is economic issues. The second one is legitimacy of government. The third one is perceived prosperity. The idea that, look, what are we with this one for? If you have a system that is slow in the name of democracy, and that is why he said no matter how complicated it looks, he gets it. If you have a system that is slow, you just imagine somebody in khaki can do a decree and get things done. Attraction from dictatorship, whether it's military, whether it's fascism, tend to come up. The president is conscious of that. That is why he's selling it to us. Once you know that, this is my message to the president, once you know that, the duty, everybody has a duty in democracy. The duty of the media is to report and hold people account. That of the legislator is to legislate and check executive. The duty of the executive is to ensure good governance. The Nigerian parlance, good governance is called dividends of democracy. Is to ensure that that is happening. Where that is not happening, of course people are going to get, not fatigue of democracy, which exists as well, by the way, because in some countries, the allure of a strong man comes from fatigue of democracy. But in underdeveloping countries, it comes from the fact that when people cannot see the benefit, now let's go historical, unless we want to fool ourselves, people should admit that in this country, in the past 25 years, those who have grown exponentially in wealth, in fame and fortune, have been those who went to political office.
But are they aware they're a major threat, existential threat to democracy themselves?
Well, the people like Tinubu will be aware. People who follow news, people who read will know. If you just take somebody who was a nobody and throw him into parliament or give him a ministerial role, those ones might not know. But those who have walked the street and read and compare themselves will be aware of it, depending on who you're talking to.
Senior Advocate, let's piggyback on the question Kayode asked, which I also observed. It appears that we are seeing the result of global discontent across nations. And the president appears to be feeling that given the economic policy that has now placed us where we are, what exactly do you think he was saying without necessarily saying it?
Thank you very much. I think that for the past 1 year, you've seen the general apathy of the people towards governance. And I think the major thing to address when you want to celebrate democracy is the process of how leaders emerge. I'm talking about the electoral process, both in the political parties, how they recruit their leaders in terms of their primaries. We must find a way to ensure that the choice of the people is reflected in the outcome of those processes. Because if you look at June 12, which was organized by the military, option A4, it was a clear election where you would see the way Nigerians were voting across ethnic lines, across religious lines. And it was done by the military. So that's what we use as a yardstick to say if we are marketing democracy, the first area to look at is elections. How do you ensure that it's the real will of the people that will emerge from the process of that recruitment? So if you judge from the period when we started democracy in 1999 up to where we are now, it's been graduating into some proportions of what you say negativity. So people have lost interest because you will clearly see that the process of that electoral organization is not reflecting the will of the people. And like Yar'Adua did, that's President Yar'Adua when he came into office, there was an acknowledgement of some fault in that process that brought him. And he said, I will not retain this. I would like to give Nigerians a different experience from the one that brought me into office. For the president to continue to sit and do as if the electoral process is faultless, that is the first area where I have a challenge. Because for you to really market something, you must get to the line where the fault exists. As long as we continue to pretend that the 2023 elections and the subsequent elections are correct and that they are genuine, we can make progress. We can't get people to have confidence in that system. So I'm expecting that on Democracy Day like this, the president will tell us what he wants to do to the Electoral Act, his suggestions, how we're going to ensure that henceforth nobody will be sworn into office who is not the real will of the people. That is the first step. Then about economic prosperity.
Yes, I wanted to say something. You say part of the problem, we as a people need to learn this lesson. Part of the problem we have with our democratic system is that it's too just partisan, purely partisan. There are few, if none at all, that thinks of the system of democracy. So, for example, last year, when some of us were saying that let us make sure that electoral processes are done within the window of 90 days before you swear in anybody. If you're going to court, go to court, finish everything so that whoever is declared winner is truly winner. That is a system thing. People called me names, saying I was doing it because I was supporting one person when really I had no dog in the fight. I didn't care about any one of them. But the truth of the matter is that if you want a system to be truly democratic, one of the first things you need to ensure that whoever is sworn in is truly accepted by everybody as the winner, through facts and through process. A simple process would be, for example, for everybody to be able to say that in my voting poll, in my, what's it called? Polling unit, election was not rigged. Just get every Nigerian to be able to say that. Then second, make sure that what really matters is the local elections, not us waiting 2 a.m. at night for somebody to be using calculator in 2023 to calculate the whole elections of Nigeria.
There's a lot to talk about from the speech. I'm sure it's going to generate lots of commentary as it has in the last few minutes. We must thank you both, gentlemen. Professor Anthony Killer, Director of Commonwealth Institute and Chairman June 12 Movement, as well as Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who joined us from our Abuja studio, Mr. Bonlo Adegborowa, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the program. We really, really do appreciate your perspective. But we're not done with that conversation yet. You know, we've talked to we call them the OGs of democracy, the men who were in the trenches, who were part of the struggle. When we come back, we're going to be talking to the successor generation like us. Well, I know you know what I mean. We'll be back after this break. Join us again.
On June the 12th, 2024, at the prestigious Abuja Continental Hotel, we bring you the gathering of the nation's foremost leaders at the Special Channels TV Security Summit and Town Hall. Heads of security agencies, experts, civil society organizations, lawmakers, and state governors will all converge to tackle the pressing security challenges facing our nation.
Part of what we did was the introduction of the Community Protection Guard.
To say that there are a lot of other measures to ensure that we beat insecurity in Kuriga community.
This is not just a summit, it's a call to action. Join us at 7 p.m. at the Abuja Continental Hotel for an evening that promises insights, solutions, and a united front against insecurity. Tune in to our Security Summit and Town Hall on June the 12th, 2024 for a discussion of solutions. Only on Channels Television, a network built on trust.
31 years ago, we entered our rites of passage to becoming a true and enduring democratic society. Going through this passage was hard and dangerous. During the fateful 6 years that followed, we fought and struggled for our natural rights as human beings, put on this earth by the divine hand of our Creator. We lost great heroes and heroines along the way. In this struggle, the winner of June 12, 1993 presidential election, Chief MKO Abiola, the most significant symbol of our democratic struggle, his wife, Kudirat, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, and Pa Alfred Iwani, amongst others, sacrificed their very lives. They bravely surrendered their fortunes so that our nation might have a better one. Let us honor the memories of Chief Anthony Enahoro, Chief Abraham Adesanya, Commodore Dan Sulaiman, Chief Arthur Nwanko, Chief Chukwuemeka Ezeibe, Admiral Ndibusi Kanu, Chief Frank Kokori, Chief Bola Ige, Chief Adekunle Ajasin, Chief Gani Udaudu, Chief Ayo Fasanmi, Chief Gani Fawemi, Chief Olabi Idrojaye, Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, Chima Ubani, and others who have transited to higher realm. The sacrifices of General Alani Akinriyade, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Professor Wole Soyinka, Chief Rab Obioha, Chief Colonels Adebayo, among many others, should never be forgotten.
Welcome back to the program. It's Democracy Day, and of course, one of the high points has been the president's speech that is already eliciting reactions, in which the president, practically made a scholarly presentation on democracy. He also spoke about our progress in economic development and the efforts of the administration. We've moved on from the old guard, the veterans of democracy. Now we're moving on with this segment with what we'll call a younger panel. And let's start by introducing from our Lagos studio, Mr. Timi Olagunju, who is the founder, Youths in Motion. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us from our Abuja studio later on would be Mr. Stanley Ekpa and Mr. Abdulmumin Abiola. We'll get to them shortly, but let's start off the conversation, first of all, in our Lagos studio. Mr. Olagunju, perhaps you'd like to share with us, first of all, your June 12 experience. On this day, 25 years ago, where were you?
Well, interestingly, the experience was quite nostalgic because I remember, staying, being somewhere at the balcony of my grandpa and overlooking, the entire election process, and the fact that, in a certain political party, you didn't have a single person, queue. It was an open ballot system, and then a particular political party, which was that of the late chief, the legend, MKO Abiola, had everybody queuing there, and it was like some kind of social reflection of the fact that, people that even wanted to vote for the other party haven't seen people queue for this other party, just knew that there was no point. In that case, evidence became the end of all arguments. But then the turn of events was quite, to a large extent, something that took everyone by storm. And it left a lasting impression on me, even, as a young person at that time.
At that time.
Yes.
And you were 25 years younger.
31.
So,
31, yeah.
31 years younger.
Younger. So over the years, let's take a walk down memory lane now. We've just seen the Martyr of Democracy himself, Chief M.K. Abiola, who just cast his ballot, and Nigerian voters, there many years down the line, casting their vote in that election that Chief M.K. Abiola is nationally acclaimed to have won. And as we celebrate Democracy Day today, it's been declared in honor of Chief M.K. Abiola himself, and we see his wife there as well. So many years down the line now, as you reflect on the ideals of our democracy, what are your thoughts, particularly with regards to the president's speech where he, as we have acknowledged, marketed democracy? Some have said that perhaps it's an acknowledgement of the growing threat to democracy within our borders here on the African continent. Have liberal democracies, made more progress because of the developments that we see, and then in Asia as well, where we see more of development? Is democracy, as the president said in his speech, the best form of government as compared to the progress that we see in other parts of the world?
I think it's quite it's clear on its own that when it comes to a system that looks beyond the economics and the indicators of it, but looks into the human part of it, and human contribution, the value for people's input and opinion, that democracy is still the best form. So on that, I completely, agree with the president in that regard, because to a large extent, when you look at it carefully, what other form of government would allow people to be able to add value, to governance in a certain way as to drive an inclusivity? Democracy is still it. If there's any other better form, anyone can come up with it. But for now, democracy is still it. However, democracy can still be better. It can evolve. It can evolve to suit the local context of, the society that it finds itself.
Let's go to our Abuja studio now. We have our guests ready. Mr. Stanley Ekpa also joins us. He's a legal practitioner. And we also have Mr. Abdulmumuni Abiola, who is the president, MKO Abiola Foundation. Naturally, Mr. Abiola, I'm going to start with you. You are the son of the Martyr of Democracy. So we're going to ask you as well to reflect on June 12. Where were you on June 12, 1993? Oh dear. We'll return to Mr. Abiola. The audio is still not perfect right now. As we continue with the president's speech, what are some of the other high points for you?
On his speech? Well, interestingly, firstly is that the fact that the president was able to acknowledge specific names, re-echoing the old national anthem, which is my favorite, though, even though we have a new one, which is "The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain." The president really echoed that fact, mentioning specific people, that symbolize, and those who weren't mentioned, but, were encapsulated or captured by that speech. That itself, for me, is quite commendable. And then, because what you promote is what becomes popular. People must know that human beings, have actually sacrificed sweat and blood. And it's important that the president re-echoed that. Also, in terms of the issue of, the economic diversification, which has been a long-touted issue, the need to have that conversation about that long due conversation about the need for the economy to be diversified away from oil and the likes. That's also very commendable from the president. And then lastly is the fact that the president spoke to the minimum wage issue and certain policy actions that could be taken. My own low points, if I'm allowed, to talk about the low points on this speech, is the fact that there was a certain level of untruths. Usman Danfodio said something. He said, "Conscience is an open wound. Only truth can heal." Now, if you look at, maybe that's the president's style, unlike Yar'Adua's style, where he acknowledged that indeed our electoral process was not transparent as to have brought him into office, and also needed to be rejigged. I didn't see that kind of statement. What I saw was a blanket statement from the president saying there was a transparent, there's been transparent, fair and free election. But the evidence is the end of argument. The evidence on ground does not speak to the fact that our elections have been increasingly transparent. That's just my gross with the president's speech in that sense.
Well, the president said quite a number of things. When he said he spoke to the minimum wage, well, some would disagree because he didn't quite speak to it
those specifics.
They wanted to hear. At least they wanted to hear a figure. And I think that would have been, yes, maybe he's trying to run away from the controversy, but that's what governance is all about. If you've made a decision, it's great to let the people know. You're about to say the thing you said that the father will not hear in the beginning. It's the same father that will resolve
that
it.
That makes
anyway.
sense. To play the devil's advocate for the president, in that sense, is that, that he made a statement on removal of fuel subsidy. Which I consider an abrupt statement, right, considering that you've not looked at the policy environment. And then this is where we are. So maybe the president is trying not to jump, the gun.
Maybe that was a problem, but this isn't, because there's been a process to it. The tripartite committee has met. They have presented their report to him. But let's talk about something that the president said, which is the fact that the true meaning of democracy is not just in looking back alone. The real work to be done is actually ahead of us. While we can find out where you were during the June 12 election in 1993 and what happened during that period, but more importantly is what democracy means to you as a young person, or what kind of democracy you want to see as a young Nigerian. And I think it's a very important point to make. The old guards talk about what they envisioned as democracy, but for you, I imagine it's quite different because you are now able to even compare with other climes. It's a global village now. So what does democracy mean for you, or what do you want it to mean to you such that you say, this is truly the best form of governance?
Well, personally, I think on a more general specific, before I move into policy specifics as to this, is the fact that I would want to see a democracy that is tailored to a specific local context in that sense, and that can help drive development at the grassroots level. And by so doing, I'm saying that a democracy that truly incorporates the powers, the place of traditional rulers, that kind of democracy, a democracy that truly incorporates the place of where traditional rulers are not stooges of political office holders who toss and turn at every point. A democracy where the local government is truly the local government, where the governance is much closer to the people than you can imagine, as close as the people as air is to them. So those are the kind of those are some of the ideals that a democracy where the federal government is not all-knowing, where there is a certain allowance for state governance to be able to work hard to make its own revenue and then pay the federal government a certain fee, not the other way around, working and then the federal government now dictates who gets what. That kind of democracy. So those are the core issues that I think we need to look at in that sense.
All right, we're going to go back to some of the things the president said in his speech today, and then we'll switch gears to Abuja studio. We have Mumuni there as well as Ekba all waiting for us. Let's take a listen to some of the excerpts of the president's speech earlier this morning.
Today, 25 years later, we celebrate the silver anniversary of our journey in democracy. We have studied the course. Democracy is neither a foreign nor abstract concept devoid of real-life meaning for us. Neither can we afford to reduce or minimize it to being nothing but the mere holding of periodic elections where one candidate and party outdo another. While elections attract democratic attention, they are but one aspect of democracy. Democracy is a way of life that encompasses a broad outlook of which elections are but a part. As such, a nation can have elections without being democratic, but a nation cannot be truly democratic without holding elections. That we have established a tradition of holding transparent, open, and fair elections gives credence to our democratic standing. That we have experienced peaceful transitions of government affirms our democratic temperament.
Let's get your immediate. I know you mentioned it in passing, but the president has said that, more like paraphrasing, we must not define our democracy based on election cycle. What's your perspective?
That's very true. Because governance is not just about the elections. It's also about, pre-elections and post-elections and how that interface is managed, graduating from there. So, yes, very key. But then the electoral cycle is like the equilibrium point, without which there can never be any flow, whether pre or post. But then bringing it back to the context of the question that he asked and connecting it with what you asked, as regards democracy and the kind of democracy, that we should also be looking at. As a young person, I would want to see a democracy where, it is not just about elections and young people's involvement during elections, but young people's involvement pre and post elections, where there are institutions in place that ensure that young people are part of the policy making process, not the way we have it, where a few young persons are appointed as special advisors, ministers. No, I mean that we do not have as a country a whole democratic structure. We do not have a presidential internship or fellowship program where distinguished young people, right, can have the privilege from different communities to learn the ropes of governance.
Let's further democratize the program, really, and bring in more people. As we've said, democracy. Absolutely. Abdulmumin Abiola, President MKO Abiola Foundation, Stanley Ekpa, legal practitioner. Finally, we can have you. And Abdulmumin, we started with you earlier on, just to get a sense of what it was for you then. For Nigerians, they know. But for you, you were right there under the tutelage of your father, probably wondering what is going on. So walk us through that process, really, the experience for you.
No, I actually thought it was a great experience, actually. For me, at the time, we had, I was I was infatuated. I was so proud of my dad, and I always wanted to be around him. He was obviously so busy, but what happened was on that day, there's this famous picture that is all around on the websites and everything, where he's holding my hand and he's coming back after he does his votes. Obviously, I couldn't go out with him because there was a lot of people with him. So when he came back, I held his hand and he walked me into the house. And I could tell that, there was this atmosphere of hope. It was like a celebration. Like nobody ever, I don't think my father even actually thought he was going to lose the election. He was just thinking it's a matter of time before he's announced as the president and the real work could start. And I think that was all he cared about. And I want to just take you back before even the elections. My father, tried to run to be president in '83. They had told him, the powers that be at the time that the ticket is not for sale. I don't understand why my father would need to buy the ticket, but that's what they said, and I think that was a way for them to just push him away and not have him run. He didn't run, obviously, and then in 1999 he came out again. But this man had been preparing for this thing. He had reached out to professors across the length and breadth of Nigeria, and I'm not saying that he went outside the country. No. There were some Nigerian professors who were based outside the country who he reached out to give him like an idea of what should be done. You know, what steps would they have taken? You know, my father was only an accountant, so he could do the accounting or the auditing aspect of governance. But there were other sectors, the health sector, you know, education, you know, basic sectors that are critical to the nation, to the progress of a nation. And he did his research. And I think it's important that we understand that before we want any leadership positions, we should be prepared for those positions. You know, so he did the research, and he was just waiting for them to announce him president, where he can now actualize some of these things he had done. You know, he said it vividly, Nigerians will fix Nigeria. You know, I understand that today we're marking June 12th, Happy Democracy Day, but Nigeria itself is not necessarily towing that path that my father might have envisioned. You know, and I think it's important that, as Mr. President said rightly, that he was also a key stakeholder to this democratic journey. He knows exactly what they were trying to do. And I would also, you know, plead with the people in government today to look at any and every way possible to get us back on track. You know, and I see some of these steps and some of these policies that are going to lead us to that promised land. It's just going to take a little bit longer. But as we wait for these, you know, for the dividends of this democracy, it is important that we do not suffocate the Nigerian people. It is important that we start to, you know, it's like, you know, the stick and the carrot. You know, you put a little bit of sucker. You can't just, you know, push policies without sensitizing the people. We need to, first of all, let people know where we are going so that they can actually adapt to that policy. You know, my father said this thing very clearly. He said, look, what I intend to do is to be a good leader. And a good leader only has one duty: to show guidance, to advise, to even try to convince. But I have no business trying to force you to do something you don't want to do. So my role as a leader will be to just educate my people, tell them what is important. And once we can do that, you know, Nigerian people would understand the sincerity in the purpose of what we're trying to do, and they will also engage. Like I said, Abiola will not have come to maybe Ogun State to come and to come and fix the gutter. But because the Nigerian people believed in the vision, they will have done that themselves because they believe in that future. And the future might not be for them to succeed. Like my father now, you know, we're talking about him well, okay, he's been dead for about 20-something years, but we're talking about 31 years of 25 years of uninterrupted democracy. What I'm saying to you is that my father never thought that, you know, he probably never thought he would die. He thought he was going to be able to run, you know, go through his first term and maybe have another chance to do more. But he didn't do it. But like I said, what we do, our actions we take now is not necessarily for our own benefit. It is for the future generation's benefit. So Mr. President's actions today might not necessarily be for his benefit. He might not even see the results of those actions he's taking, but those actions need to be taken for the future of this nation. I am encouraged that he has identified that there's some economic challenges that we're going through. And it's important that he hasn't seen that there are economic challenges. What are the steps that we're going to do or take to get us out of it? I am ready to lay my energy, time, and support towards helping Mr. President get to that promised land. Yes, Mr. President is the one in the villa. I am the one, but we are all in Nigeria. So it doesn't really matter where in Nigeria you are, as long as Nigeria is working. So I am totally engaged with Mr. President's vision towards this renewed hope, because I think we need to renew this hope. You know, you know, I'm hoping that our next June 12 will be something that will be a thing of celebration. Now we're reflecting. We have looked back, but it's enough of looking back. It's now time to forge forward do the work and move this country forward. So, alhamdulillah, thank you so much. You know, because
your
I think
fire
that it's important
and
that
passion.
we understand.
Mr. Abiola, your fire and passion are indeed unmistakable, and I'm sure that a lot of Nigerians are seeing an MKO incarnate in you, and not just in that passion, but also in your tone of voice as well. Let's further democratize the conversation as we now go to Mr. Stanley Ekpa. Mr. Abiola has talked a lot about what needs to be done in practical terms, besides, you know, the yearly grandstanding and the speech making. If we piggyback to Mr. Timmy's commentary as well about young people and the need for inclusion in democratic development, do you see beyond the appointments that he talked about being mere tokenism, do you see a deliberate involvement of young people in decision-making that would actually cause a change?
Thank you very much. And once again, let me join other Nigerians to congratulate all of us for witnessing a quarter of a century history of unbroken version of our own democracy, and also to commiserate with families of those that have lost their lives, on this journey of building a stable and functional democracy for all Nigerians. Back to your question, I do not think that we've built a system that is meant to engage young Nigerians in beyond those that have the privilege to be part of the system. And why do I say so? Despite the fact that we have improved legal framework for inclusion, you look at the Not Too Young to Run Act, you look at amendment to the Electoral Act, you look at different policies that has been brought up to see that there's so much of inclusion of either young persons, women, or people with disability. You realize the fact that institutionally we've not really done well to ensuring that we have young people or people that may not have the capacity on their own. I mean, what I mean that, I mean people at the grassroots now who has the credentials of competence to participate in the political space, or who has the capacity to serve their communities. We have not given them that chance. The space seems to still be blocked, for those that are within the elite space or within the political space. It is still, as my learned brother said earlier on, it is still for those young persons that has the privilege of knowing the political leaders, at the moment, who are giving either special advisor, special assistant, and all that. And that exactly is not a way to define, the inclusivity as a variable of democracy. You have to look at exactly what has our democracy done in ensuring that the voice of everyone that is qualified, everyone that is competent, everyone that is present, everyone that has something to offer is being given that opportunity to do so. And the best way, of course, we can actually do that is to see that we decentralize the way we see democracy, really. For the last 25 years, we've been made to believe that there's just one person, the president, who is the defined symbol of our democracy. But it shouldn't be that way. We have 36 governors of the states. We have 469 federal lawmakers. We have 993 State House of Assembly. We have 8,809 ward councillors. We have leaders across different levels of governance in the country. And the best way to bring young people on board is if all these levels of governance, we're able to see how best we can create a space for young people to participate. It may not be elective offices. It could as well be appointive or mentorship offices that is going to enable them to learn, really. Because it is not the case that because people are young, we should give them the opportunity to serve or to lead. It must be based on the fact that they've built the credentials of competence, they've built the credentials of the character, and then, of course, they have the capacity to really deliver if given any mandate to serve their communities, really.
Let's take it back to Momoni as we begin to wind down. Maybe your last thought. I came on that document, 1990 Ogoni Bill of Rights, and I looked at some of the things they required in Ogoni land. I realized that the same thing they're asking for is still being asked for across communities today. 25 years now down the line of this unbroken democracy, projecting to 25 years from now. What is it that you don't want to see on the list anymore?
Well, I need to, first of all, look at the list you're referring to, because I don't think I've seen that list.
I'm talking about the list of the basics. We're still talking about water, road, education, health, the very basics.
Okay, so the song, that jingle. Okay, so the jingle that my father had, no lights, no water, attire for this country. Okay, I get your point. You see, for me,
Go ahead.
For me, I think it's it's important that we put our democracy in context. You have to understand that after my father's demise and the 5 years of dictatorship of late Sani Abacha, we found that Nigerian people were already I think they were frustrated. This was, the Nigerian psyche was damaged to a point that it was so easy for General Abdul Salam to just give us a contraption as a constitution. Now, this is the bane of our problems. And I've said this over and over again. If we are to actually truly want Nigeria to move forward, we first of all have to identify what Nigeria is. And we need to do that as a collective whole. I looked forward to this speech from Mr. President, and I hoped that he was going to talk about maybe constitutional amendments. We can see that there's so many things that we're going through in the country that the Constitution is silent about. We're talking about local governments and their autonomy, and, we're having different, with dissenting voices. We need to have a document that accurately depicts us and guides us towards that goal. I believe that, inshallah, in due course and with more representation, we need to participate. We cannot have a situation where we have 90 million people with voters' cards and the people who end up voting for the president is only about, the total population of voters is 20 million. So let's see if we can encourage our brothers and sisters to get involved, get educated, and then engage with these leaders. That is the only way we're going to get to that promised land.
All right, Mr. Ekpa, your last words also in 60 seconds. 60 seconds, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I think my last word would have to be that we have to look for our democracy in terms of, the utilitarian demands. Exactly how is our democracy, promoting the greatest good for the greatest number of Nigerians. Secondly, we have to, begin to look at our democracy in terms of what exactly is our democracy doing, to education and human capital development for Nigerians. What exactly is democracy doing to healthcare for Nigerians? What exactly is democracy doing for productivity for Nigeria? What exactly is our democracy doing to secure the lives of Nigerians? What exactly, is our democracy doing to provide the well-being and welfare of Nigerians? But more importantly also, this democracy we are referring to, whose democracy is it? By who is this democracy being run? Is it for the select few, or is it by all Nigerians and for all Nigerians? But most importantly also is the fact that we must also begin to look at the core variables of democracy, inclusivity. Who are the ones involved in this? It should be all of us, really. And if we go beyond inclusivity, we must begin to see that we have to, remove a bit of the monetized system of our democracy. Democracy should be about debate. It should be about public conversation as to issues that affect all of us. It shouldn't be about money. It shouldn't be about those that have the control over the structure.
Yes,
it should be also more about how we have to implement. Thank you so much.
We're totally out of time, pardon me. This Young People's Parliament has indeed been vibrant, and as a result, our profound gratitude to you, Mr. Stanley Ekpa, legal practitioner who joined us from our Abuja studio, Mr. Abdulmumuni Abiola, Mr. Abdulmumuni Abiola, President MKO Abiola Foundation. Thank you for your time on the program. And from our Lagos studio, Mr. Timi Olagunju, the founder, Youths in Motion. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so we'll switch gears now. We're still with the spirit and letter of democracy. This time around, we'll be looking at the letter of June 12, 1993, as we walk down memory lane, trying to find out what had exactly happened. How was the story told in papers from 1993? You don't want to miss this part of the conversation, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Preparations already in top gear for that parade and celebration of democracy in the nation's capital, Abuja, I guess as well across the sub-nationals. It's a big mood across the country, but right here in the studio, we're doing something different. We're going way back, and we have a guy, that's what he is to us right now, Fuad Lawal, the executive director of archiving.ng. He actually curates Nigeria's way back as, is it 1994 now?
Yeah, currently 1994.
Okay. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Fun day.
I'm tempted to ask where you were or what you were doing June 12,
1993.
1993. It's a trick question. I
think I was shitting on my body. I was like 2.
There you go.
I was expecting that. I
thought that literally.
Yeah, to be honest, I was not yet 2. I was actually a year and a half.
There you were getting there. So you had no memories.
So no memories. Any memories I have now are fraudulent. They are not mine. Definitely not mine.
Okay. And you've been curating a lot of work, so obviously you have you've acquired the memory, the much-needed memory.
Well, you can see that's actually an interesting way to frame it, considering that, like, in a way, like, records are a collective memory, and that's kind of like what archiving tries to do.
Achieve.
Yeah,
brilliant.
To basically like build a collective memory as a society.
So talk to us, because you've curated, particularly around June 12, before we start looking at the pages. What was the tone? Because the president in the speech today actually commended journalists, the fourth estate of the realm, mentioned the newspaper outfits and talked about journalists that were detained and the rest. So he was on that side. Also a media owner of sorts. But generally, how was it reported? How was June 12 reported, both during and after?
So there was a lot of optimism. It felt like there was a singularity of purpose, like in just the landscape, right? The zeitgeist was not like this one is from the south, this is from the north, this is from, like, it really like embodied like a moment of genuine Nigerian hope and optimism. There's this, and you see it in all the newspapers across every single paper. There was also, like, before the elections, there was a kind of like cautious optimism. So there was always like, will it happen? 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 It's going to be 1992. It's going to be 1993. And then it finally happened, right? Now, when you read stories from the time, you find out that, like, there are many reasons why Nigerians consider it to be very, very free and fair. Right. First of all, it was even the voting system was very different. You lined up behind your candidate. Secondly, there were a lot of soldiers. So, like, you tried nonsense, you just get screwed, right? And so there was this sense of, like, yes, this thing is happening. This thing is for all of us, right? And then over the next few weeks, that hope started to, like, that optimism and energy started to change to concern. What's happening? What's happening?
So all of this captured in the papers?
Yes. So when you think of some of the big, like, the major coverage, then you think of, obviously, Concord, which was also Abiola's newspaper, very important to keep in mind. So naturally they held a very, very pro-Abiola position. But it was also a popular position. So there was Newswatch. Newswatch was there. Right, there was still, like, there were all these, there was The Statesman, right, which I think is now defunct. But there was a lot of, like, there was not a lot of trust, and there was very serious skepticism with the government. And then we just saw how, like, IBB annulled the elections, even he, like, when you read, like, even interviews from the 2000s, because one of the interesting things about, like, June 12 is not even just the coverage of June 12 at the time, is a retrospective that people now did over, like, the next, like, 2 decades, right? So one of the interesting things that happens almost every June 12 every year is that one paper somewhere is going to interview someone very important, right? And they're going to reflect on June 12. So, for example, it's IBB, like, acknowledging that, you know what, well, like, it wasn't really great. And, like, so there's enough literature to go around on June 12 that if you just spent some time just doing, like, a deep dive on how June 12 and how it has evolved in the perception of Nigerians, right, over the decades, from people's, like, just wanting, like, June 12, the election is coming, then June 12 itself becoming a symbol, and then becoming a mandate, even after Abiola died, which is, like, the real democracy day should be June 12. And so, like, I was speaking to a very young writer, which is funny because I'm also, like, Gen Z, right? She just turned 21 last week, and she didn't understand why Nigerians were so fascinated by June 12. And we just looked through the archives. I was like, oh, I get it now. Oh, I get it now. Yeah. So it was a very, very intense time.
So I know you're Gen Z. Well, I was old enough to see what was going on. I clearly know those pictures. I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
I can remember vividly, from the excitement to the tension, like we're literally going to explode as a country at that particular point when that election was annulled. But looking strictly at the papers, what were the things you considered were the dream of that moment? And what are you seeing today, looking strictly at papers?
So Nigeria hasn't changed much. And so, like, history is cyclical, right? It's like it always, like, moves in a cycle. The hope is that it moves in, like, an upward spiral, like it's cycling upwards to progress. But, like, when you look at, like, 1993, and as you mentioned earlier in one of the segments earlier, it's the same issues, right? When you zoom back 10 years, right, to Shagari's government, 1983, that was overthrown by the coup that brought in Buhari, same issues, right? Same power, same everything. So, like, while the great, like, paradox is that while June 12 was about hope, right? It's also about, like, serious, frustrating repetition.
I think we're all curious to go to the papers.
Yeah.
Okay, which one is that?
So let's go back to the previous one, the June 12 protests in Lagos. Now, it's interesting because this is, like, 4 years after 1993. And as you said, okay, now this is...
what date was this?
This was, I think, 96. Right, that's Adisa was the federal ministry, the Minister for Works and Housing at that time, and there was some retrenchment of workers. But look at what is under there. 10 Nigerian journalists die. And do you want to walk us through this front page?
So, like, just zooming out to, like journalists, right? One of the strongest indicators of a democratic society, of course, is just freedom of the press, right? In, like, the 90s, the 80s, like mid 80s to late 90s, is probably, like, the ugliest period, the worst period I've been a Nigerian journalist, right? So PM News, for example, like, it was a literal local paper. They were always getting, like, trouble from the military. The offices were getting shut down every now and then. There was Daily Giwa, which was in the 80s, right? And it was literally just a real, like, state of fear, right? You had some journalists in situations where, like, they show up, like, they are arrested for their journalism, they end up in prison. There's that famous interview, I think it was Tel, or I can't remember now, Tel on Newswatch, where they were thrown in prison. It does use the opportunity to interview Fela since we're here anyway. So it's really, like, one of the strongest indicators of a society that is important. It's like that we need to continue to nurture. It's just like building a fourth estate that constantly holds power accountable. There's this honestly illusion that we can do without like established like media like and journalists like just organizations focused on producing journalism, because everyone can raise a phone, right? But the thing about like citizen journalism largely, for example, and why it's important to differentiate it, is that citizen journalism a lot of the time will do the very, very shallow stuff of seeing stuff, reporting it, bringing it to public consciousness, but it needs to a group of people's job to go deeper.
But speaking of differentiation, what is significantly different between how journalists were treated back then and now? You know, you talked about that time being very difficult to being a journalist.
Yeah.
But what's significantly different even now?
To be very, very honest, like we still have like serious issues. Like we have a few weeks ago, journalists was picked up. But even more largely, like when you think of how like the ability to hold power accountable to some degree is in many ways decentralized, right? You even think of like the Erisco issue, right? Because in a sense, like 25 years ago, that would have been the job of a journalist to say, do not use this tomato paste because it is too sweet, right? But like in this sense, like journalism is less about. I mean, journalism is important, but from first principles, when you really think about it, it is about speech and accountability, right? And like documenting society. And every time people are doing that accurately, especially, any form of like speaking up to that or like trying to suppress that, even if it looks like the law, is dangerous.
I mean, we understand that case is also being investigated. And just to say, that episode or that particular paper we saw was 1995. Actually, PM News, incidentally, founded by people in government now. It's quite interesting how we have come full circle. But Fuad, we have to thank you. We need maybe a full day. To go through the treasure trove that you have. We've not even scratched the surface. And look at this, showing as radio goes.
It's very interesting because like
Fuad, we have to run now, literally, but we'd like to thank you so much. All of these things you can find on archiving. That's archive.ng. Important to spell that out properly.
I'm proud of you.
Fuad, we have to thank you so much for at least giving us a sense of where we're coming from. I think it will help shape where we're going to. Fuad Lawal, of course, is doing amazing work with archiving. Thank you so much for your time, Fuad.
Thank you for having me.
Little time, but we have a lot to take. Let's join our correspondent live at the nation's capital, Abuja. Larry Lasisi is live for us at the heart of the venue where a lot of things will be happening today. So Larry, just talk us away. What is going on there? What should we expect?
Well, Kayode, I can tell you that all is in readiness for the parade. And the people filing in. As far as the program is concerned, the event has already started. If I take you to my left, you'll see all the military men standing proudly in readiness for the parade. And I'd like to draw your attention to the big, what will I call it there? Well, you can see it with the green, white, green. Written on it, world largest painting portrait on canvas. This is a major highlight of this event. But I can tell you that everything is getting ready. We're going to move quickly and quietly towards 10 o'clock when this event should kick off with the arrival of the president. Before then, in protocol order, we will be having arrival of other dignitaries, other government officials as they lead up to that time. But I can tell you here, everything is ready to mark this day, the Democracy Day in Nigeria.
Well, Larry, busy day apparently for you and a lot of Nigerians. So we'll be coming to you from time to time. We'd like to thank you so much. It's interesting to see that largest painting on canvas. So thank you, Larry, for the updates. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. We're just scratching the surface. It's a big day for us here in Nigeria. So stay with us right here on Channels Television. Sunrise Daily is next. We're handing over the baton to them, literally. So you will not miss anything. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Happy Democracy Day. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
who's your guy? Now Olumide Akpata, Oludi. See us we dey like beans and rice. And the people, I will never leave your side. I will never ever, I dedicate my time, forever, time to you, my people. Even if the road be rough, I know mine. Cause together we shall stand.
My people, make we all come out on election day and vote Olumide Osaigbavo Akpata, una guy as governor of Edo State. He ready to change our story and bring better life for we and our pikin them. Vote Labour Party, the party for Papa, Mama and pikin. Make we vote well, oh. Oludi, confirm. Now you be our guy. Labour Party, forward ever.
Olumide Akpata.
Do you desire a paint that will give your building that soothing appeal? Think Royal Splendor Coat. We try to appeal to your desire with our beautiful colors for a royal touch that brings splendor look. Try out our test coat, emulsion, silk, and matte paint to give your building that royal touch. Our paints come in varieties of classic, executive, and royal brands. Visit our showroom at Friends Filling Station by Anwai Campus Gate off Asaba Ugbolu Ila Road, or call us on 0803 074 6655 or 0701 313 3557. Royal Splendor Paints, for that royalty you desire.